Fake famous seemed to be wanting to make 3 different points at once, and it never really got there on any of them. That's it. That's my intro. Hi, I'm Amanda, and you're watching Swell Entertainment. I am a full-time YouTuber. Here on YouTube, I am considered an influencer. On Instagram, I'm considered a micro-influencer. And on Twitter, I'm considered annoying. I always go into documentaries about influencers and social media with kind of like open-minded, prepared, because I know a lot of times it's just gonna be biased against people who make a living on social media and things like that. But a lot of times they do make good points, or they are critical of things that should be critical on. I mean, at the end of the day, I am a commentary YouTuber for the most part. I am literally critical of influencers. I'm critical of influencer pushed products. I started the I Tried It So You Don't Have To series for the sole purpose of investigating these products that people were sponsored by. I am not against documentaries that are critical of influencers or critical of content creators, or ones that are critical or talking about the downsides of social media, because they are conversations we do need to have. However, I watched Fake Famous from HBO Max the other day, and I have some things that I would like to address. Before I start addressing my critiques of Fake Famous, if anyone slides into my comment section and says, oh, well, they talked about this in an interview with the director, they talked about this with a different interview or in a publication. If I need to do supplemental research to understand the parameters of the experiment at the core of your documentary, you made a bad documentary. Fake Famous is a documentary from HBO Max made by Nick Bilton. And I think the core focus is talking about how influencing is fake and harmful, but then also it ends with COVID. So influencers are also all selfish and everything is fake, and fame isn't real. Influencer fame isn't real, I think. Is that right? Did I get it? Because I don't think you did. The core structure of Fake Famous and what they advertised the documentary off of is that Nick Bilton wanted to take 3 people and make them fake famous, or real famous but fake. I still don't understand the parameters of their social experiment, but I don't think they did either. The opening of the documentary is a commentary on influencing and the pink wall on Melrose. For transparency's sake, here's some photos from my Instagram of 18-year-old Amanda at the pink wall. The discussion about the pink wall at the start makes very little sense to me, because like it calls it a tourist attraction, and it's like, but it's an Instagram spot. Okay, tourist attractions have always been a thing. People have always taken photos of tourist attractions. Bilton kind of picks and chooses what he chooses to share with the audience in the documentary. For example, he'll tell us which website he's using to buy bots from, but he's not telling us which studies he's citing, or he's not telling us which website he's using to verify engagement amounts on a post and what's real and what's legitimate. I have an issue with that. After the pink wall opening, Bilton tells us about a study that was done about what kids want to be when they grow up.
What do you want to be when you grow up? Today, kids in America say they want to be this more than any other occupation on earth: a famous influencer.
I think I know which study he's talking about. We are really not given any sort of a legitimate timeline in this documentary. All we really have to go on is when Dominic asks one of the other influencers on a brand trip she's on what she wants to do for Valentine's Day. So that's either early February or late January. And then COVID happens. So February, March, okay, is like the end date for what we have. So this was started probably early 2020, late 2019. Correction at the end of the documentary, Bilton says we are now 5 months into the social experiment. So with our end date that we know in mind, that's gonna put the start date for this sometime around September, October of 2019. This particular article came from Business Insider of July of 2019. American kids want to be famous on YouTube, and kids in China want to go to space survey. A recent survey of 3,000 kids found that being a YouTube star was a more sought after profession than being an astronaut among kids in the US and the United Kingdom. But I believe this is the particular study that Bilton is referring to, and nowhere in it does it mention influencing or being an influencer. Sure, you can equate being a YouTuber with being an influencer. I consider myself an influencer, at least strictly on YouTube. I don't get free shit for being a YouTuber. mainly because I'm a product reviewer and they're worried that I'm going to rip into it. I don't do paid reviews, but I have done sponsorships. But my point is that Bilton doesn't tell us which study he's referring to when he says that kids want to be famous or influencers when they grow up. So I'm assuming what he's talking about is the study where kids are saying that they want to be YouTubers. Let's talk about the fake fame experiment, because again, they give us very little information and the parameters that we are shown are so non-consistent. Apparently, they did an open casting call with the simple question of, do you want to be famous? But they see a bunch of people, they have a bunch of people demonstrate talents for some reason, and then they choose 3 people that they claim would not become famous for their talents. And then they immediately cut to Dom, or Dominic, who's an actor.
So instead, we decided to go with 3 less obvious choices: Dominique, Wiley, and Chris.
Dom is definitely the one that benefited the most from this social experiment, but girl, I'm telling you, they did you a little dirty with that edit. Before the experiment, they end up choosing Dominic, Wiley, and Chris to be their focal point for this experiment, their test subjects, if you will. I have questions about the casting call. They claim they just put out a casting call of, do you want to be famous? But we are not told where they put this casting call out, how they distributed the information. Was it an Instagram ad? Was it a Facebook ad? Did they put it on an Actors Access? Did they put it on LA Casting? Like, they got a bunch of people from LA. So obviously your pool of applicants is already going to be a bunch of hot people. However, I do think that the social experiment would have been way more impactful and probably told a better story if you maybe try to get people who weren't conventionally attractive. Considering one of the main arguments for this whole social experiment was how social media and influencers are fake, and they kept showing examples of Photoshop fails and photo editing, it would make sense if you got some people who are maybe not incredibly conventionally influencer attractive, and you then used Facetune or something to like make them hotter to see how that would go. I don't think they did any crazy photo editing, and the examples were shown. In one photo in particular, Dominic is like hiking in the redwoods, or they're trying to make it seem like she's hiking in the redwoods, and she took a photo and there's like a metal pole behind her. Like, you couldn't even edit that out. You couldn't be bothered. For how much work they do to like fake the lifestyles that they're doing, it's the laziest way possible to do this, I think. Like I said, they took 3 people. All of them have varying size followings on Instagram, and they decided that they're going to do photo shoots for them to kind of add a lifestyle of like fictional influencing lifestyles. Like, they're just suddenly going to start posting influencer content, not being influencers, which I do think is interesting. And I would have more respect for this experiment if you made them all post the exact same frickin' thing. The basic scientific method is you have a hypothesis, you come up with an experiment, you get a result, you repeat the experiment multiple times to see if you get the same result to either confirm or deny your hypothesis. I think, I don't know, I was an English major. When your experiment is 3 people, we want to make them fake famous. We're not really sure what the famous element is. They don't really show us. Why not have them all literally post the same exact content? They're all based in LA. You're obviously getting ideas for these photos from influencers, so there's a trend in influencer content, so it wouldn't matter if you have all 3 of them post the exact same content, because then you have, you know, at least a consistent thread in your experimentation than just focus on one person then, if you're gonna have them all do different stuff. You know, it doesn't really make sense. And I don't know what the goal was. We're not really told. Dominic starts getting free stuff pretty quickly. I don't know what quickly means, because again, we're not given a parameters, but it's like we're basically led to believe it's within a few photos of her posting, essentially. We're not given a timeline of how long it took for her to start getting free stuff. But the way that they are trying to get them to the influencer spotlight is that Bilton is gonna buy them all bots. Bilton, I believe, tells us the initial number of bots he buys for each of them, but he doesn't continue to tell us how many bots he's buying.
And I'm gonna buy Dominique 7,500 followers today for the grand price of $119.60. Do it again for Wiley. And we're gonna buy Chris 7,500 followers.
He also doesn't tell us how many likes or comments he buys from bots for each photo. We're never given parameters of what they say is fake famous. Okay, like what is the goal that they're trying to get these 3 influencers, fake influencers to? Because if it's just to get free shit, Dominic gets free shit immediately. But they don't really tell us, oh, we're trying to get this threshold of followers. We're trying to get people to recognize them on the street. We are trying to get interview requests. We are trying to get, like, they don't tell us anything. It's just like, okay, she's getting free stuff. Okay, you did it. She's an influencer now. The end. We're just not really told what the end goal is. And honestly, based on what we were shown, I'm convinced that if it weren't for COVID, they didn't have an end in mind. Or if they did have an end in mind, it is never made clear what that end was without COVID being involved. Bilton never tells us what the final total number of bots is that he bought for each person, or how many total likes he bought, or how many total comments he bought. So we have no way of knowing if these people actually successfully started gaining followers or not. For the most part, when it comes to bots and influencers, the goal is not to build your entire audience out of bots, because that gets you nothing. Typically, it's my understanding when it comes to buying bots that the goal is to stimulate your own audience and stimulate more followers, or to kind of push yourself over a milestone, or if you are canceled and you're rapidly losing followers, trying to keep yourself over certain milestones so that you don't lose out on brand deals. If we're going off just based on what's in the documentary, then they make it sound like Dominic never gained legitimate followers until COVID happened and people were stuck inside. If the goal wasn't to gain her legitimate following, then what's the point of trying to make her fake famous? Later on, when they're trying to get Dominic big brand sponsorships, Bilton says that a lot of these companies have the money to pour into software that does actually look for bots in follower base.
Not only did the software report that she had almost 100,000 real and engaged followers, but it also said that she ranked in the top 0.01% of the most famous people on the planet.
Now, he doesn't tell us what the search engine was. Most of those search engines that test for bots just measure engagement. All they do is they look at your following number, the amount of people following you, and then they look at the amount of engagement your posts get when you post. The problem with a lot of these search engines for verifying follower counts and trying to see what percentage is bots and what's are not is that they're flawed more so now because of the way that the algorithm now works on Instagram. Posts on Instagram are not put forward to people's feeds in chronological order. I have people that I follow on Instagram who I have not seen a post from them in 3 months, and they post every week. That doesn't mean that that follower is a bot. It just means it's an inactive follower on paper in the algorithm, in engagement-wise. So a lot of these search engines may read legitimate follower numbers as bots.
Either I'm really fucking good at buying bots, or the software is a scam too.
Yes, you are good at buying bots, Bilton, because you bought followers and you bought engagement. All these search sites do is measure engagement. So you literally prevented them from catching your bots because you were buying engagement alongside buying bots. I'm getting really worked up over this documentary, but someone had to take it seriously because they didn't. Anyway, let me talk about Wiley and Chris real quick. By the way, all the subjects of this experiment, I will be linking their Instagrams down below if you want to go check any of this out. Some of the posts, I believe, are still up. Chris wanted to build a legitimate following. He really wanted to become famous because he wanted people to vibe with him for the most part, which makes sense why he responded to the "Do you want to be famous" casting call. However, I don't understand why he agreed to be a part of this social experiment, or if they told him something different, because he never seems to be having a good time when he's involved in this. Even in like the first thing that they do, which is like a makeover for all of them, they give them all haircuts, they braid his hair. He's excited about the design of it. He's like, that looks really great. But he doesn't seem to be happy about the whole thing. Chris, if you want to reach out to me and tell me why you agreed to be a part of the social experiment, feel free to, because it does look like you are not having a good time. The entire social experiment element of it all. If it was just to get more eyes on yourself and your clothing brand, brilliant. Play the system. Where the issue came in for Wiley is when the facade was poked at by, I believe, someone in his home state.
And then there's Wiley.
I was getting some anxiety because some people, or I think it was just this one guy, kept messaging me about these bots, and they were increasing really fast. And one morning I just woke up and I had 12,000 followers, and it was kind of scary.
He does talk about his anxiety with the follower count. He knew the follower number was bots, but it was still a scary number to him. And I can relate to that in a sense, because last year I had about 6,600 subscribers. I was alone in a hotel room in San Francisco for a UFO convention that I was at for a video that I was fairly certain was only gonna get like 800 views. While I was there, I had a video get picked up in the algorithm, and I started getting thousands of views and thousands of subscribers every hour, and I just started hyperventilating, and I had a panic attack in my hotel room. That feeling of, I want this thing, I want to be recognized, I want this fame, and then suddenly getting it when you're not prepared for it, and the anxiety and fear that can come from that, because now if I fall, there's so many more eyes on me, is something they legitimately could have looked into with this documentary, and they just didn't really look into it that much. They kind of painted the feeling that Wiley was going through as kind of like a a forced imposter syndrome, sort of, but the imposter syndrome was real because he was an imposter in this sense, because they were all bots. That's what it was. And someone realized that he was buying Russian bots, and he panicked and shut down his profile and made it private. There was something legitimate there. That anxiety over wanting something so bad and then the reality being much more terrifying than you were prepared for, or getting it at a time when you're not prepared for it, is a legitimate thing that they could have gone into, and they just don't really go into it much. He basically leaves the social experiment. They stop buying him bots. He finds a new job that he has happiness with, and he just kind of posts whatever he wants, and he's having more fun with that. Dominic is thriving in this social experiment. She's getting free stuff. She's getting invited on brand trips. They kind of tried to show the reality of the brand trip, but it was like, I don't know. I felt like if they'd gotten her like a vacation brand trip and not just like, oh, it's a Vegas trip for this brand to go take photos with them, like, I don't know, I felt like there was a better way to demonstrate that. But I mean, this is the brand trip that she got. This whole brand trip kind of goes against the documentary as well, because they have some experts on, because they're punctuating everything with like journalists and experts in the field and things like that, sort of. And on one time, they're like, an influencer is someone who is unemployed with no ambition. And then they go on this brand trip, and Dominic is talking about how much work all these girls do behind the scenes with these brand trips. Yeah, it's not as glitzy and glamorous as it is, but it is work. Like, there's stuff in it. And then they kind of go against that, and it just made very little sense. Like, what's the connecting point here? We are told that Dominique is thriving in her career of being an actor in LA with the growth of her Instagram. Like, her management loves it. She's going into casting calls, and the people involved in the casting call are coming out to be like, we love your Instagram, or the photographer loves your Instagram, and all this stuff. So she's thriving in that regards. And then the final test with Dominic, we're told, is that they want to see if they can get her a brand trip completely paid for.
Hey, apartments over there. This is Jimmy speaking.
Hi, my name's Dominique Druckmann. I'm obsessed with your hotel.
Hi, I'm Dominique Druckmann. I'm a huge fan of your brand.
We are then told that she gets an incredible opportunity.
A free, all-expense-paid vacation, which includes a free hotel suite for Dom and a friend, a $1,000 shopping spree, bottle service at a club, dinner at a 5-star restaurant, and spa treatment.
I think you're lying. I don't think you got that. A voiceover from Bilton is the one who tells us that she got all that. We don't see Dominic's reaction to getting those brand deals. We don't see her reaction to booking the hotel. The way the documentary ends, and again, I don't think they would have had an ending if it weren't for COVID, because supposedly they have to cancel their trip because of the coronavirus. Travel gets shut down, obviously, so they cancel their trip because of COVID. And then though she's not going out and getting free stuff from stores themselves, she is still getting sent free things because brands are so desperate to make a sale. And at the end of the day, it's partially that. It's also partially because of the pandemic. A lot of brands switched all of their marketing money into online promotion. Stay-at-home orders, people had more time on their hands, more YouTube videos were being watched, more Instagram things were being looked at. Therefore, they tried to say that that is when Dominic started getting legitimate followers, because people were just desperate for content from home. So she didn't get real followers the whole time? Really? She apparently had a video that went legitimately viral because someone sent her a bidet. It's kind of funny. But they end the documentary. Bilton has his final interview with Dom.
I've had so many realizations on how fake all of this is.
This concluding interview with Dom and Bilton is a little all over the place and also a little confusing, because it seems to be trying to separate who's an influencer and who's not, but based on very weird criteria. Like anyone who had a following and used it to promote community or organize donation or to encourage people to stay at home during the pandemic and follow CDC guidelines. It doesn't matter what your following is or who you are not an influencer.
People say this made my week. I was laughing so hard. So if I can do that for more people, I think that'd be incredible. And I think that goes along with fame. And then there's the influencers.
In their criteria, the influencers are the people that traveled. Yes, there are absolutely influencers who skirted stay-at-home orders because they had the money to afford to go to the Bahamas when everyone else was stuck inside and hundreds of thousands of people were dying. Yes, that is a legitimate reality, and we need to call those people out when we see it, because that is selfish and ignorant. But there are also a lot of people, content creators, influencers, who didn't travel, who didn't use their wealth and their privilege from their following to skirt stay-at-home orders, who didn't use their platform for showing off partying and drinking in public spaces being dicks about mask orders. There's a lot of people who didn't do that. There are also a lot of people who use their influence and their audiences to encourage them to stay at home, to wear masks, to follow CDC guidelines, to be safe and courteous of others. Influencers who also openly shamed other influencers who weren't following CDC guidelines. I get what you're trying to do with this documentary, but ending on the note of all influencers are selfish assholes because of COVID, we learned that because of COVID. Yeah, a lot of people are selfish assholes. A lot of people get money and fame and don't give a shit, but there are a lot of celebrities, like legitimate celebrities, who did the same thing. It doesn't make it right, but to just put it all on influencers, that it was only influencers traveling and skirting the guidelines, just doesn't, it's just not realistic. That's just not the case. And also, one of the photos they showed, it's a girl in a bikini laying in what looks like a backyard. What makes you think she's traveling at the beach? That could literally be her house. Built in, I think your social experiment was flawed from the start. And I am very curious what your original end goal in mind for the social experiment would have been if it weren't for COVID, ending with the nice little bow that you could slap on your documentary that everything is fake and your influencers are selfish. If I was the one doing this documentary and doing the social experiment, here's what I would have done. Something that I kept expecting for Bilton to touch on in this documentary, and he just didn't, was how much money brands lose every year to fake followings and fake influencers. Influencer marketing fraud will cost brands $1.3 billion in 2019. Fake influencers with botted followings cost brands an estimated over $1 billion in 2019. We could have made this whole documentary geared around that and how fake followers and how influencers fake content to get free stuff from brands, and how these brands are never going to see a return on investment, an ROI, because all the following is fake. It's all bots. The brands that Dominic got, sure, now probably they're going to see some type of return, but the return that they got from originally giving her something was nothing, because her following was botted. It was non-existent. Could have made the entire fake famous documentary about how fake influencers with botted followings are scamming companies, because that's what you were doing. You were scamming these brands into giving Dominic free stuff. Instead, you tried to focus on the scam that is influencing on self-esteem, a lifestyle, trying to make people feel worse about themselves like that, when we have no idea if that was actually even achieved with your social experiment, because we're never shown the legitimate numbers of what followers are real and what followers are bots. So right off the bat, I would have changed the social experiment by framing the entire thing around how much companies are being scammed out of fake influencers. So then the whole conclusion of the experiment could have been, here's how much bots we got, here's how much of a legitimate following we got, and here's the total cost of all the free product that Dominic got from being a fake influencer for 6 months. I also would have changed the parameters that all 3 of my test subjects all got the same amount of bots purchased for them at the same amount of times, the same amount of content would be posted, the same type of content would be posted, and then measuring the actual following that could have been gained from that. I think that would be a better parameters for your experiment overall. I could probably keep going about Fake Famous, but I have a feeling that this video is going to be already way too long, so I'm going to cut it here. Did you watch Fake Famous? Have you ever bought and bought? Do you have an HBO Max subscription? Did you follow any of these people that I talked about on Instagram before finding out about the documentary? Let me know. Comment down below. Shout out to my patrons. Thank you so much for supporting me on Patreon. If you'd also like to support me on Patreon, that'll be listed down below. If you'd like to follow me on my social media, that'll be all up here. And that's going to be it. Have a lovely day. Goodbye. I just don't like wasted potential, and so much of this documentary had so much that could have worked for it, and it was just like overlooked, squandered, not utilized whatsoever. Thank you, Elaine, Allie, Alan, Elise, Alex, Braden, Cameron, Christopher, Chris, Cody, Colton, Crash, PC, Devon, Dirty One, Don, Elliot, Essen, Evan, Feckless, Hopeless, Paulo, Jacker A, Jakers, Joe, John M, Jordan, Joseph, Kenny, Kevin, Kim, Kristen, Lex, Lisa, Luis, Manga, Matt O, Matthew S, Meme, Load the Red, Michael, Jane, Nathaniel, Pat, Palak, Rob, Robbie, Ross, Robert, Sam, Simon, Stephen, Tasha, Timothy, Tom, Tyrone, Wendy, William, Zedry.